5 centuries ago, a single regulation changed the future of the world. It wasn't a victory won or a ruler crowned. It wasn't the discovery of a new land or the signing of a treaty. Someone decided that promises could replace gold, that paper could take the place of silver. And since then, every kingdom that followed this path learned the same dangerous lesson. Promises cannot be trusted. Paper always loses its value. What if I told you that this system has been quietly running for 5 centuries? What if I told you that those in power swore their paper was strong, stable, and the only option? And what if I told you that today, the same lies are being repeated? The dollar stands at the peak of the world economy, a currency that controls global trade. Every purchase, every transaction, every nation's reserves depend on its existence. But power built upon promises carries a dangerous flaw. It can vanish overnight. And when the time comes, the collapse won't be slow. It will be fast, violent, and deep. 5 empires have tasted this bitter end. The question is not whether we will be the next. The question is whether we will take precautions in time. What history books won't tell you is this: the end of money is never an accident. It is not a choice. Every fallen state made similar decisions. They began with real money backed by real value. They ended with meaningless paper and meaningless promises. And it always followed the same steps, the same path, the same deadly outcome. The first to witness this pattern was 16th century Spain. They possessed more gold and silver than any other nation in history. Ships overflowing with treasure crossed the Atlantic in endless convoys. The Spanish crown believed that wealth was metal, and they had more metal than anyone. But there was an irony that destroyed them. They had too much money, and that can be as dangerous as having too little. The flood of Spanish silver across Europe caused inflation. What once cost 1 coin suddenly cost dozens. The richest empire became a nation whose people starved. Spain learned that real wealth isn't about how much money you have, but how valuable that money is. But Spain's mistake was only the beginning. It was the first step, and every empire that followed took the same path, with small differences but the same inevitable end. Then came the Dutch Republic, which grew not from its treasury but from trade and banking. They built the first modern stock exchange, the first central bank, the first system of paper promises, backed by future profits. For a century it worked brilliantly. Amsterdam became the world's financial capital. Dutch merchants dominated global trade. Their currency was trusted from London to Beijing, and then promises could no longer bear the weight of reality. Too much paper, too little substance. The bubble burst, fortunes evaporated, and the Dutch suffered the same fate Spain once had. You cannot build wealth out of paper. Next came the British Empire, and they thought they had solved the problem. Instead of trusting only treasuries or promises, they backed their money with gold. The gold standard meant every pound could be exchanged for a fixed amount of precious metal. The system seemed perfect, unbreakable, eternal, and for 2 centuries it appeared to work. Britain directed global trade, became the largest empire in history, and its currency became the foundation of world commerce. But even the gold standard had weaknesses. It limited how much money governments could create, and governments always want more money than they have. When World War I began, the British faced a choice: stay loyal to the gold standard and lose the war, or abandon it and print money to win. They chose victory over honesty, inflation over stability. The gold standard died, and with it, the link between money and order. During the French Revolution, the French tried a different approach. They backed their money not with metal, but with land. The assignats were supported by church properties seized by the revolutionary government. It was innovative, patriotic, and completely disastrous. The government printed assignats to fund the revolution, and then even more to finance wars. Soon, so many assignats flooded the market that they became worthless. Peasants refused to sell food for paper money. Hunger riots erupted in the cities. The collapse of money triggered uprisings, and the revolution consumed itself. The Confederate States of America experienced one of the most catastrophic monetary collapses in modern history. To continue the war, they desperately printed money. Confederate dollars flooded the South while goods became scarcer. By the war's end, what once cost a single coin now cost hundreds of Confederate dollars. Soldiers were paid with worthless notes. Families carried sacks of money to buy a single loaf of bread. When the Confederacy fell, they didn't just lose the war. They saw their savings turn into paper fit only for burning. But what makes this truly terrifying is this: every empire was different. Every generation believed their system was stronger, smarter, more stable than the last. The Spaniards trusted treasure, the Dutch trusted trade and banking, the British trusted gold, the French trusted revolutionary zeal, and the Confederates trusted determination. They were all wrong, and they all met the same fate. Each began with honest money, gold, silver, land, tangible assets, and each ended with paper money backed only by a government's promise. And every state, when faced with crisis, chose to break that promise rather than keep it. The pattern is almost mathematical. 1. Stage. real money backed by real assets. Second stage, gradual replacement of real value with paper promises. Third stage, a crisis where leaders can't resist the temptation to print more money. Fourth stage, public realization and loss of trust. Fifth stage, money collapses and the government falls. This cycle has repeated across 5 centuries, 5 continents, and 5 different systems. Technology changed, governments changed, faces changed, but the foundation remained the same. And now, the United States dollar follows the same path. The dollar began its journey like the other empires. The Coinage Act of 1792 established a firm foundation for America's money system. Every dollar was defined by its value in silver or gold. You could walk into any bank and exchange your paper money for its metal equivalent. The promise seemed simple, safe, and risk-free. It lasted for over a century, but promises become dangerous when governments need money. The Civil War created the first major crack in the system. Lincoln's administration issued greenbacks, paper money backed not by metals, but by the government's word. It was meant to be temporary, to disappear after the war. Part of it did, but a door had been opened. America had tasted money printing, and like every empire before it, it couldn't stop. The real transformation happened so slowly that most people didn't even notice. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was established, giving a private institution control over America's currency. In 1933, Roosevelt made it illegal for citizens to own gold. Americans could no longer hold the metal that backed their money. It became a crime. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement made the dollar the world's reserve currency, but the gold-backed illusion continued. On August 15, 1971, President Nixon severed the final link between the dollar and gold. He called it temporary, but that temporary measure has lasted more than 50 years. The dollar became what economists call fiat money, and we, like every empire before us, convinced ourselves that we were different. If governments want unlimited money, they simply print it. The temptation is irresistible, and the people's welfare is rarely the first concern of politicians. Look at the world today and you'll see the early signs. China and Russia trade in their own currencies, bypassing the dollar. European nations quietly reduce their dollar reserves. For the first time since the dawn of the petrodollar system, oil producers are accepting payments in yuan. This is not normal. It's a warning sign that trust in the American currency is fading. The most dangerous part is that everything still looks normal. Rome didn't fall in a day. Neither did Spain, France, or Britain. Their currencies devalued slowly, then collapsed suddenly. Their empires eroded gradually, then vanished overnight. The people living then didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. Today, Americans carry wallets full of paper backed only by government promises to accept it as tax. Their wealth exists as digital numbers on bank screens. They live in a system where every new dollar printed makes each existing dollar worth less, and through it all, they believe their money is somehow different from the failed currencies of the past. The pattern is undeniable. Like Spain, America prints to fund endless wars. Like the Netherlands, it inflates financial bubbles. Like Britain, it severed the link between money and gold. Like revolutionary France, it backs its currency with future promises. And like the Confederacy, it's discovering that printing money leads to ruin. This pattern repeats in every age. The first stage happened long ago. Real money backed by real value. The second stage unfolded throughout the 20th century. Paper promises replaced precious metals. The third stage began after the 2008 financial crisis. Money printing accelerated. Now we are in the fourth stage. Trust is eroding, and more nations and institutions are questioning whether America can be trusted. The question is no longer whether the dollar will share the fate of other currencies. The question is whether we will recognize it before the fifth stage arrives. 500 years of history make it clear. The dollar's path is not unique. It follows the same road that destroyed the Spanish real, the Dutch guilder, the British pound's gold backing, the French assignat, and the Confederate dollar. Technology has changed. The scale has grown. But the foundation is the same. We are in the fourth stage of a 5-stage collapse. Trust is fading. The world is slowly waking up to history's harsh reminder. Promises are not wealth. Paper is not value. Trust without foundation always turns to nothing. The signs are everywhere. Nations abandoning the dollar. Currencies challenging the American system. Debt levels capable of crushing any empire. The most dangerous belief is thinking we are different. Every empire thought so. Every government believed its system was more stable. Every generation thought its money would break the cycle. They were all tragically wrong. History doesn't repeat, but if you ignore it, it will crush you. The question is not whether the dollar will join the list of failed currencies. The question is whether you'll see it before everyone else does. If what I said made you think, don't forget to subscribe. All the answers of history are at your fingertips.